And welcome back, everybody, once more to the Mind Blossom. You're tuned in. You're on the frequency. Welcome. In this show, I'd like to talk about what's been on my mind over the past week, what I've been thinking about, and just whatever's going on. You know what I mean? Not in the world, but in my mind. And what I've been thinking about is how to find perfect joy. How can I access the deepest, most intense, most broad, vast, deep, everlasting joy? And it's beginning to occur to me that the source of this kind of joy lies in a service to others. Not so much a service to self, but a service to others. Why do I say that? Well, service to self requires um, attachment to so many different things. When we serve ourselves, when that's our priority, is just doing for us, it will never be enough because we always will find that there are more itches to scratch. There are more ways to satisfy our ego. The ego never gets enough. It could never get enough. The ego is not really one thing, but rather a collection of many different vices that we have. And when we create a life that's based around serving ourselves and meeting our own needs only, we will find that the needs continue to multiply, and there's just no end to the thirst and there's no end. It just wants more, like a downward spiral. And you see how this turns into lust, and the more you're oriented this way, the more desire you have to control everyone in all the scenarios so that it maximizes the amount of pleasure you get. You know what I mean? You see how destructive this is, how a life formed around this uh, way of being can turn into a perversion, can pervert you into a non-human. It will turn you into a grotesque abomination. So what I say is that service to others, that's a part of freedom. That's a part of your freedom. Because when you live to serve others, you have an opportunity to use your unique skills and gifts in such a way that you uplift the overall vibration of humanity. And if you and everybody else did this, you would eventually generate paradise on earth, and everybody would live really peaceful, enthusiastic, curious, adventurous, spiritual, passionate lives. And so, service to self, when that's your bedrock, when that's your main, most basic orientation towards life, then you don't need to worry about possessions. You don't need to worry about your accumulations. Accumulations, the internal trophy room of all of our rewards and titles and accomplishments, it gets to be a lot of maintenance. It's like, it takes a lot of your time and energy. False idols, idolatry, the worship of idols, is uh, idol worship requires a lot of energy. You need to continue to supply those things with your psychic energy and your emotions and your time. But when you surrender, when you forget about all the idols and the possessions and this and the stuff that you can get out of this world, when you begin to realize that all of that stuff is pointless, you can just step into the flowing river of experience and enjoy the ride. And it becomes less about what you can get out of the world and more about the joy of the regular everyday experience. I find personally that when I am more insular and when I am more focused on my ego when I'm more focused on becoming somebody and being somebody, the more secretly defensive that I am, and the more that I need to, uh, I guess, objectify others in order to maintain a static and regular version of who I think I am. And that's not the problem with that, is that it prevents genuine, good old intimacy. I'm not talking necessarily about romantic intimacy, but the intimacy that you feel when you're around anybody, that natural recognition of their soul, when your soul and their soul see each other and ignite. The light in me sees the light in you. Well, that light gets suffocated under so many different layers of the ego when you're trying to be somebody. So I'm going to use an example. I'm a counselor. I recently got my license, actually, to be an associate counselor. Okay, I don't have my LPC yet, but my point is that a counselor can sometimes, if they're not careful, they can get too in their head about being a helper or a healer or a counselor. And the doctors, anybody can do this. And they start to identify with the role to the point where they want everybody in the world is a client now. Everybody else is the patient, and I'm the therapist, and I'm always a therapist, and I'm always a counselor. And that's very rigid, and it doesn't allow much room for being a whole person. And it leads to a lot of um, discomfort, and you miss out on the joy of life because we identify with just being one role. And not to mention, a counselor who insists on being a counselor will struggle to let their human side come through. And it's the human connection that really heals, or that really facilitates a lot of the healing. But I digress from the counselor example. I'm not sure if that's really helping us out here. I'm not sure. As I grow, I find that joy is so important, having it on a daily basis. For many years, I used to live without joy on a daily basis, and I would just wait till I got home from work to experience joy, or I'd wait to the weekends to experience joy, or sometimes I couldn't get joy unless I was doing, uh, smoking weed or drinking alcohol or doing or vaping. Sometimes those little possessions would hold my joy hostage, and I would have to access those things before I could get joy. Um, and then I realized that stuff's not joy. The drugs, the porn, the um, the whatever the little thing is, that's just pleasure. Joy is deeper and more broad and vast and more everlasting, and but it's also in a way more subtle. It kind of takes a little bit of discipline to get at. And what I mean by that is that there's no real cheat code to getting joy. Like you could always just, you know, well, there's no cheat code for it. It has to be, you have to align your vibration to match the vibration of joy. If you want to enter the domain of joy, you, the gatekeeper there is joy itself. Anything that steps into joy gets transformed into joy because it's of a higher vibration. The higher vibrations of our cosmos, gratitude, joy, love, upwards like that, they don't accommodate for lower vibrations. If you seek to move into the kingdom of heaven, which is to say the process of journeying upwards in frequency until you achieve paradise, you just have to evolve. You have to get onto those vibrations, and then you can access. Then you can be there, right? But you have to mold yourself to get into that reality. And it takes a little bit of discipline to become a joy-centric individual rather than a pleasure-seeking, ego gratification-based individual. It takes discipline. And as far as I can tell right now, part of the discipline involves becoming a servant to the world rather than a person who can just wants to get what they can. That type of person who wants to get and receive only, they will always be on the, they're always going to be thirsty for more. They'll never be satisfied. And their dopamine hits are going to be inconsistent. It's always going to be a rough and rocky oscillation back and forth between the highs and the lows. Joy is a lot more consistent. It's more streamlined. It's accepting of the lows, and it doesn't need to be high, and so it kind of just surfs through, it surfs on that wave of life. It just coasts, and it's a perfect streamlined experience of pure awareness for what things are, because it doesn't need an up. It doesn't need the ups. It doesn't need to get high. So it doesn't need those extreme peaks and valleys. And that's why the higher frequencies seem like, so they're much more fine and subtle. The amplitude between waves is so much more flattened and blissful and just perfect streamlined. The amplitude, the difference between the crests, the peaks and valleys of the wave is not so exaggerated and extreme. It just rides that middle in its perfect awareness. And so, it's up to us. Do we want to get high or do we want to get free? Sometimes we get a little high, but we gotta, um, I guess I say we gotta, but you know, you don't gotta do anything. But I like getting free more and molding myself into a vessel for the light such that that I can evolve in the direction of joy. They say that gratitude leads to joy and joy leads to love. And maybe you have a different order or you've heard it a different way, but it's a spiral of moving upwards and accessing the paradise frequencies by just getting used to them, disciplining yourself to get used to them. How do you give to the world? It's in your best interest to figure out what your gift is, the gift that keeps on giving. But it really is. The gift that you have is meant to be discovered, and then after that, it's meant to be given away. Now, there's a difference between giving things away like a martyr, and that's not what you're supposed to do. It's not about sacrificing yourself and not setting boundaries. Like we say, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's about giving and receiving. Like I talked about in my last video, circulate your blessings. Let the blessings flow through you. Judgment is something that I try to withdraw. When I catch myself judging somebody else, I quickly remind myself that, first of all, Frank, you're judging them. And remember that when you judge somebody, you are you're projecting onto them. There's something about that person that reminds you of yourself. Our environment, the frequencies of our environment match the frequencies of our internal environment in some way. What's going on outside is a reflection of what's going on inside. There's something similar, there's a link. And so I know on an intuitive level that when somebody's triggering me, or if I recognize a quality in somebody that I don't like, there is a reflection of me in there. There's something about them that reminds me of myself. And it's subconscious, it's occurring beneath my awareness, and all I can see is the disgust. But I have to remind myself that that's a reflection of my internal state. And in any case, everybody's going through their own challenges. I've been through challenges. I've done things that I wish I hadn't done, and I've made mistakes, and there have been qualities in my personality that I didn't like and that I had to change. And everybody's at a different stage of development. So how can I look down on anybody else We are all evolving and progressing, and we are all going through the chemical transformation into our higher selves. And I met somebody once who told me that anytime I ever judged somebody, I'd later on had to experience that I judged them for. Anytime I judge somebody, I ended up having to experience that which I judged them for. Be careful when you judge people, for you may have to experience it yourself at a certain point. Spirituality is good because it gives you a place to grow. It makes you remember that it's not all just about this earthly drama. It gives you a direction to move towards. It inspires you to grow as a person, to develop your morals, to develop your sense of love, to develop your connection to the light. Light in our world is this bright photon emitting phenomenon that lets us see in the darkness, right? Light is, it's bright in a three-dimensional way. Here it is. We can see it. It has color, but that's light on the third dimension. If we move upwards into the dimensions that we normally can't see, the more fine-tuned, etheric and spiritual planes, light, it becomes different. It becomes more like information. It becomes more like awareness, a beam of awareness in the void of ignorance. And so all of these light codes from beyond, they manifest in our world and they surround us. I say that spirituality can be a good thing because it helps us reach for something beyond the physical. And yet, for that same reason, it can also be an escape. People use spirituality to escape the material world. And that's a perversion of spirituality. That's not what it's meant for. You can't escape through spirituality. You can't escape from anything, anywhere, anytime. You can't really be spiritual if your internal vibration is set towards escape. Escape to what? The higher realms? The more free realms? Before passing into the kingdom of heaven, before passing into the land of eternal vitalization and love, before stepping into the absolute, before stepping into freedom, you have to become that freedom and that love. You have to transform yourself into that light. If you are the kind of person who wants to escape, you will always be on the run. You will always be trying to escape. And your fears, whatever it is that you are running from, it will populate and manifest in the external world in so many different forms. And you will always be on the run, no matter where you go. And every escapade into the spiritual world will be purely intellectual, or it will be a sensationalization of some sort, or it will just be false or surface level. Because there's no escape. You'll take your vibration with you. Escape implies fear, and that fear will follow you until it is confronted, or rather faced at the very least, and given love. Only love can transform fear, and that is a necessary part of stepping into the world of perfect freedom. You can't escape, you can only transform. The forces of love will harmonize the disgruntled and chaotic and discordant frequencies of fear. They are abnormal. They constitute an abomination. An abomination necessarily has discordant frequencies, but love is harmonic. There are people who insist on delving into discord, the discordant frequencies of our cosmos. There are people who insist on operating, resetting their operating system, their internal operating system, such that they function in the presence of discord, chaos, dysfunction, as opposed to the harmony and purity of light. These are what we call demons, avatars of chaos. They bring destruction, chaos, confusion. You can call them evil if you wish, but to them they are not evil. To them, they are performing a cosmic function. And it benefits you not to recognize them as evil. It benefits you more to recognize them for what they are and to accept them and, hear this, to show them love anyway. Because only through love can their energies be transformed. For so long as you hate the demonic energies of the world, they will continue to torment you. Only through love and light can they be alchemized back into harmony. Many of us are traumatized. And so, therefore, we have fragments of our psyche which have broken off from the whole. There exists within our psychology fractured parts of ourselves. They float in orbit around the main body of who we think we are. These fractured pieces, they were broken off during times of trauma. They absorbed the blow, so to speak. They took one for the team, and they separated from our main sense of self. And now they float in the darkness of the unconscious, where we attempt to repress them, but we can still feel their pain radiating from the darkness. It comes forth in thoughts, feelings, images. Maybe these are intrusive thoughts, painful sensations, images that we would rather not see, and yet they come forward out of the darkness from the far corners of our mind, and they make themselves known. These fragments of our personality, of our psyche, of our soul, which broke off because they absorbed the trauma and disassociated themselves into the darkness so that we could go on living without the painful memory of what happened. But now they're crying out for help because it has been too long, and they have been alone for too long. And above all, their pain and their cries of help, all the negativity that they bring in our life, is a cry for help. Because they need to be reunited. The soul seeks reintegration with itself. And so, we must receive these signals which pulse like a heartbeat in the internal darkness of our psyche. Recognize these signals and make room for them And when they present themselves, try, if you can, not to judge them, but rather show them love. These lost, fragmented, broken parts of yourself. When you show them love, you accept them for what they are. You see them not with disgust, but rather with empathy. And in this way, you begin to feel the pain that they've been carrying for so long. And this opens up your heart. And the open heart is a portal for those forsaken, lost, damaged pieces of your soul to come back in and reintegrate. And you can welcome them. And you can love them anyway. And in this way, you transform them back into who they were prior to the trauma. And you say to them, I love you. I love you. I love you. Your love is a harmonizing force. You can become a more efficient vessel for love by checking your attachments. Every attachment you have is a force that would refocus your conscious attention into a small, narrow tunnel of ignorance, as opposed to the wide open skies of selflessness. When your attention span is pigeonholed into a tunnel of ignorance, you have no room to let in the light. Therefore, you have no room to let in love. And so your consciousness becomes engulfed in the darkness of ignorance. It becomes constricted. It becomes compressed. It does not reflect light, but rather it refracts light. In this way, you are not an appropriate vessel for the light of the Absolute to shine through. And if you are not an appropriate vessel for the light of the Absolute to shine through, you will have a lot of difficulty in transforming your external reality. But if you can harness the power of love, then you can transform the world. You can transform everything in your surrounding. Everything can be transformed in your favor. It will be transformed to match your vibration. And if your vibration is love, then you'll be living in paradise, internally and externally. So, get at the love. Well, how? Like I said, it starts small with gratitude. And it leads to joy. And it leads to love. Love the parts of yourself that are feeling pain. I feel for them. And when I look across for me and I see another person who is in pain, I feel their pain too. I don't own it because it's theirs and that's their karma, but I feel it and I send them love and I love them anyway. I would love them because they are them, because they have their pain. And because they are perfect in spite of it. We're talking about freedom. How much freedom can you handle? You are a flower, and you are blossoming under the divine light of the Absolute. Let your petals unfold naturally, for they cannot be forced open. When the flower of your soul detects light from above, true light, not the false light, not the false neon light of material attachments and low density amusements, but rather the true, perfect, all consuming light, the annihilating light of love. When the flower of your soul begins to receive light codes from this perfect ultimate source, it will unfold naturally to receive it more and more. And in the darkness, meditate. I encourage all of us to experience more joy and more freedom by calling the light and invoking the light. It is so easy and so simple. We're just not used to it. You may call the light simply by thinking about it, simply by visualizing it. Imagine yourself glowing with perfect light, and this light is also love. This light is love from Most High, and you can invoke it in yourself and have it permeate your aura and every cell of your being, every strand of DNA in your physical body, and all parts of your being on every plane, permeated with light simply by thinking about light, simply by visualizing it. Become glowing with light. It can be any color you want. It can be of whatever intensity and tone. Let yourself become completely full and brilliant with light. You can imagine light from above, holographic, perfect, warm light, taking the shape of so many different butterflies and have them landing on you. A shower of white, celestial, or golden butterflies landing on you. And when each butterfly lands on your skin, it absorbs into your body and fills every cell in your being with light. And you can send these butterflies outwards onto the world. Go inwards. Light can move through all dimensions at once. It can be anywhere and everywhere at once. Go inwards on the inner planes of reality. Move through space and time to wherever you want to be. You can be with anyone you want to be, and you can give them your light. You can project your light onto them. And in the real external world, they will feel it. How about that? You can cross space and time by accessing your imagination. You can meet someone where they are, wherever they are, in your imagination. and project light into their heart from your heart. Those are your higher selves meeting. And when you do this, the light from their higher self will transfer downwards into their mortal being, and you will have improved that person's life. Call light down from the higher worlds to yourself, and when you are so full of it that you can take no more, project it outwards onto the world. You don't need to worry about being hated or ostracized. You don't need to worry about being ridiculed for your light. The people who try to tear others down because of their light, those people are lost. They're lost in ignorance. They're afraid of the light because it demands that they evolve. But for so long as you are a beacon of this light, you will transform all negative energies that come your way. How else can we be more evolved? And why would we want to be more evolved? Because freedom is the best feeling in the world. Freedom is the best way to exist. We all want to experience more freedom rather than less. And the only way to really do that is to grow spiritually. That's the only way. That's the most perfect way. Experiencing more freedom within on a daily basis, no matter the circumstances, being able to transform your reality instantly without effort because of how tapped in you are with the light. This is freedom. And so, how can we become more free? Well, so many ways. I just talk about all the ways that come to mind. But one such way is recognizing our need to control other people. The greater need we feel to control others, the less free we really are. If you feel a strong need to control the events around you, the circumstances, if you feel a strong need to control the people in your life such that they match your preferred image of them, you are not free. You are bound by the attachment you have. This attachment is an attachment to some image you have in your mind, some desire you have. It would gratify you more if that person behaved the way you want them to. So how they are in reality is not in accord with your preference. But the more we can learn to accept other people exactly for who and what they are, the more freedom we have. Okay? That about wraps it up for today, everybody. Welcome back to the Mind Blossom. Thank you for being here. And until next time, everybody, peace out.